Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're starting a brand new fanfic, which is what if Orochimaru experimented on Naruto after being banished to Mokuton Naruto 2 Part 2. If you enjoy this story, please like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you want a part 2. Now, let's begin the fanfic. Next time you get summoned, it will be for tea, I promise, said Hiruzen with a soft smile on his face, the grim situation having a firm grip on his mind. Things couldn't get much worse for him. The only thing that could make this fight harder for him would be if Orochimaru joined in. Enma nodded and transformed into a large bow staff, one that Hiruzen quickly scooped up and used to swat Tobirama away before breathing fire at Hashirama, forcing the undead Hokage to summon a wall of earth to block the flames. A bullet of water barely missed Hiruzen as he jumped out of the way at the last second. He turned in the direction of where the water bullet came from, his mouth opening for a series of mud bullets. At least that was the plan. Things changed when the ground split from shaking like an end of the world-level earthquake was happening. The three Hokages all muttered it at the same time, Tsunade. Hashirama quite literally leveled the fighting ground with a slam of his hands, the ground being repaired back to normal. The reward for his work was being bashed in the face with the bow staff that Hiruzen was wielding, his head coming off. The body stumbled around, trying to find its head. Knowing that it would a minute for that to happen, Hiruzen turned his attention back to Tobirama, racing towards the white-haired Hokage. Engaging him in a bout of taijutsu that would make Guy cry with tears of joy from the pure art of their back and forth, Hiruzen was got the best of Tobirama by Enma slapping him away with his massive hand that erupted from the end of the bow staff. Hiruzen was left huffing heavily, his body begging for a rest. One that he couldn't afford to give it at the moment. Hashirama's body had found its head and was whole once again. Tobirama had already recovered and was dashing back towards him. Taking a deep breath, Hiruzen rushed forward to match Tobirama, his one-time sensei slipping under a swipe of the bow staff and hitting Hiruzen in the chest. Hiruzen was set skidding backwards, his body being ragdolled by the strong blow. His skidding was ending by a wooden hand crashing into his back, sending him up into the air. Thinking quickly, a mud wall shot out of his mouth and he dropped onto it. Enma was back in his monkey form, restraining Tobirama. The monkey summon was only allowed by the reanimated Hokage because the seal in the Hokage's head gave the instruction to attack Hiruzen and nobody else, thus allowing Tobirama to allow himself to be held back from attacking Enma for holding him back. Using the brief moment to catch his breath, Hiruzen tried to think of a way out of this, a way that he could potentially survive this fight. But there was no, these monsters would never stop. They would never stop coming at him. He couldn't allow their souls to remain on this world, it was unnatural. Looking up at the sky, the sun was high in the sky, the afternoon heat felt. But despite it being physically early in the morning, Hiruzen didn't see anything but a setting sun. There was one jutsu that he could one that he knew from the time he spent studying it with Minato. One that he wished he had the courage to use in place of Minato, all those years ago. At least he would get the chance to catch up with his old friend, even if it was in the belly of the beast. With Kakashi and Kushina, once Tsunade and Naruto took the fourth Kazekage out of the fight, Kushina went right back to rushing in, Kakashi on her tail. Orochimaru showed his former student no mercy, cutting her down in an instant. Kakashi ignored it and moved forward, his Sharingan allowing him to dodge the unnaturally angled slash of the sword before he moved in and fought Orochimaru hand to hand. Kakashi was in close, fighting as hard as he could, avoiding using any chakra so that he could use his Sharingan as long as possible. Kushina was a couple feet away, her chakra created chains manifesting from her back and keeping Orochimaru from getting close enough to finish Kakashi. Orochimaru exploded in a burst of mud and Kakashi was forced to cover his eyes, the biting pain of a sword going through his shoulder forcing them back open. I wanted to take your arm, hissed Orochimaru only for a kunai to stab into his own shoulder and the first Kakashi fade away. Genjutsu. That eye is truly amazing, imagine if you had two of them Kakashi, said Orochimaru, pulling the kunai out of his body. The ground shook, but they were far enough away that the ground wasn't ripping up from whatever it was that was causing it. Kushina had somehow gotten a sword, most likely from one of the dead sand shinobi in the stands. Most of them were already dead due to the other Konoha Jonin in the stands along with the Chunin and Genin. Tell me why you would do this, sensei, said Kushina, pointing the sword at Orochimaru. Why else would I do anything? Because I want to burn this village down to the ground. I want to master every known jutsu known to the shinobi. Hiruzen and Kakashi here are some of the biggest walking of libraries in all the nations. I want what they have, stated the snake. Then I am given no choice other than to put an end to you, declared Kushina. Oh please, I've been humoring you up until this point, Kushina. Your son over there too, he doesn't belong in a fight like this. Tsunade is doing most of the work, but none of you here besides sensei can actually hope to match me, said Orochimaru before he made a single hand sign. Kushina looked at her hand as it crumbled away, her face holding a look of pure shock. I could have done that whenever I wanted, like I said, I was choosing to humor you. And at this point, I am no longer choosing to do so, said Orochimaru before a strong breeze blew the rest of Kushina's crumbling body away. All that remained was a mummified corpse in her place. Kakashi took a deep breath, his body trembling as he knew that he would be forced to go the rest of this fight alone. You don't have to throw your life away, Kakashi, step aside. Allow me to take the Uchiha brat, give me the experiment over there and I will allow you to live, said Orochimaru. Yeah, I don't think so, said Kakashi, as he closed his Sharingan eye. Oh, do you plan on stopping me yourself? Questioned Orochimaru. Actually, he has some friends, said another voice that caused both of them to look at the arena wall to the left. Anko stood on the wall, looking down at Orochimaru with pure hate in her eyes. Speaking of experiments, here is the biggest failure of them, taunted Orochimaru as he tried to use the curse mark on her neck to bring her to her knees, only for it to fail. I sealed away her curse mark, much better than what I did with Sasuke's, said Kakashi as he opened his Sharingan, the 3 tomes gone and replaced with a triangle-like design with curved lines from one point to the other. What is this? Questioned Orochimaru before he felt the pull on his body and barely managed to replace himself with a mud clone at the last second. The clone's arm was ripped off by some vortex. That is a new jutsu, commented Orochimaru, his interest in the jutsu that had just shredded his clone. Where did you get that? It must be from this new form of Sharingan. I'll have to rip it from your head before I leave. Kakashi tried not to let the look of disappointment reach his face. He was nearly out of chakra, he could do that again maybe once before he was done for the rest of the fight. Anko dropped down next to him and he glanced at her before training his eyes on Orochimaru, who simply smiled at the two of them with glee. Back with Tsunade and Naruto. Rasa was having a bad day, he was, to be quite frank, getting his beat. If it wasn't Naruto running interference with his wood, it was Tsunade ripping through his defenses and landing body-wrecking hit after body-wrecking hit. His gold that had once lined his arms was gone, the thin coating that he wore as armor had been stripped of his body long ago. His body was covered in bruises, his right hand was broken from where Tsunade had grabbed him. As he went to jump above Tsunade, wooden binds wrapped around his limbs in mid-air and just like with Gaara, his chakra was ed up the wood. Unable to do anything, Rasa could only watch as Tsunade walked up to him and with a hand covered in medical chakra, hit him in the chest. His heart gave only a couple more struggling beats before stopping. Naruto released him and Rasa dropped to the ground dead. Naruto walked over to Tsunade and the dead Kazekage and asked, "Now what? How much chakra do you have?" asked Tsunade. "More than everyone else here," answered Naruto before Tsunade bopped him over the head for his check. "Good. Then you can go help run interference for Hiruzen from a distance. If you get hurt, I'll heal you and then beat you up 10 times worse," said Tsunade as she ruffled his hair before watching Naruto run off towards the large wave of water crashing into the wall of flames. Tsunade turned her sights back over to where Kakashi was no longer fighting Orochimaru but now with the help of Anko. Building up chakra, Tsunade rushed forward and managed to land a devastating blow to Orochimaru's face, only for him to warp and turn into a mud clone. Su-chan, you wound me with your intent to kill me. Tsked Orochimaru, a frown gracing his face for the first time all day. I intend to make sure this day is your last, swore Tsunade before she made a hand sign and the diamond on her forehead expanded into a seal that covered her entire forehead and Orochimaru felt her chakra levels rise and rise and rise some more. It was both terrifying and interesting to him. She had clearly made some new jutsu since the last time that he had seen her. This one seemingly was based on hiding bits and pieces of her chakra in that seal on her forehead. A little power up isn't going to save you, tsked Orochimaru. This is more than a little power up, I have re-energized my entire body, at this point. I am basically unkillable, retorted Tsunade as she rushed forward, ready to fight her one-time friend. Orochimaru rushed forward as well, his sword ready to pierce her fist that she had thrown at him. But much to his surprise, his sword bounced off of her fist and when her fist slammed into his face, he was sent bouncing along the ground. Despite the massive concussion, the blurred vision, and the ringing of his own brain melting in his ear, Orochimaru could clearly see what the hype was for this jutsu and why Tsunade would be so proud of this one. His sword was famous for being able to cut through everything, had just bounced off of her skin. Ah, I see, there was more to your technique than just false confidence in your ability to heal yourself faster than I could see with all that extra chakra, commented Orochimaru as he pulled himself off the ground. Tsunade huffed and didn't say anything. She wasn't here to talk. She was here to put down one of the people that she loved most in the world. Gritting her teeth, she rushed forward just as the barrier around the arena flickered before dropping for a second before immediately coming back up. What kind of trick is this? Asked Tsunade. I don't know, answered Orochimaru as he was confused himself. There was a burst of smoke and Orochimaru gulped, as out of the smoke walked Jiraiya, a pair of old toads on his shoulders, his face already showing the signs of sage mode. Sorry I'm late to the party, but better late than ever, said the toad sage, and for the first time, Orochimaru wasn't sure that this was a good idea. But before the three Sannin could get into their fight, the area that Naruto and Hiruzen were fighting the reanimated Hokages in was suddenly covered in trees, the one lighter ones coming from Naruto, the darker coming from Hashirama. Looks like you have to decide, myself or the boy Jiraiya, taunted Orochimaru. Tamari had felt the terrible power flood the world around here, an icy cold chill followed that sickening power. It made her freeze in her spot, but her head still whirled around to see the large tress that had exploded from the ground, rising towards the sky begin to wilt. The lighter of the trees fell before the dark of the trees and the purple barrier that had surrounded the main fight disappeared. The trees hit the ground and large clouds of dust were kicked up. As the barrier vanished, so did the coldness and the sickening power. Freed from her spot, Tamari drew her fan. She spun around, unleashing a tornado of wind that pushed back everyone next to her. Stopping, she looked up and saw a squad of sound shinobi rushing away. The pale skin in the middle let her know that it was Orochimaru being forced to retreat. Her stomach twisted. If the snake had been repelled by the forces of Konoha, what had happened to her father? Mere seconds after the sound ninja left, a squad of Konoha Anbu were seen fleeing as well. The body that they were surrounding was limp and lifeless. She was almost certain that it would be the body of the late third Hokage if things had gone to plan. Bending her knees, she pushed chakra into her legs as she slung her fan back onto her back. She launched herself up into air. Soaring up, she landed on the cracked, damaged edge wall of the arena, her view filled with the slowly dispersing dust clouds. Her lungs filled with chakra and she blew the cloud away as she pushed the chakra-laced air out of her body. She looked around and she could immediately see the still form of her father, his body still draped in his formal cage cloaks. It made her stomach twist even more as she was forced to take in that her father had really died. They had not been close. Her father had been cold and abrasive, but at the end of the day, the man was still her father. Jumping down from the top of the wall, she landed on the sandy ground and made her way towards the body of her father on the ground. She ignored the stares of the Konoha shinobi around her as she single-mindedly made her way towards her dad's corpse. She had just made it there and taken a knee to touch his body when she felt the kunai that had already been thrown at her back. She barely had time to turn around when the kunai was mere feet away. But much to her surprise, she was not stabbed by the flying knife. Instead, a wall of mud rose up from the ground far faster than she could react to block the knight. Out of the corner of her eyes, she saw Naruto on his knees, his right hand covered in mud as it was touching the ground. Naruto, how could you save her? She's part of the invading force, growled a Chunin, the man who threw the kunai based on his extended arm and hand. Because old man Hokage wouldn't want any more needless bloodshed. The invasion is over, Orochimaru has been driven away. The cage is quite literally dead at her feet, panted Naruto. Fine, spat the Chunin before he turned to Temari and said, grab his body and leave now, I will not be so nice next time. Now scram before I think of taking my kindness back. Temari nodded and scooped her father's body up and slung him over her shoulders before she gave Naruto a soft smile before she pumped chakra into her legs and pushed off, leaving in a blurry hurry. Naruto dropped his hands and knees to face down on the ground, his body giving out from the punishment that he had received. Rolling over, he looked up at the clouds blanketing the sky, the rare spots of bright blue breaking through the gray blanket. Hiruzen-sensei would be proud of you for that, said Jiraiya as he emerged from someone in the arena. Naruto didn't say anything in response right away, instead his eyes continued to stare up at the clouds that hung over his body. So now what, Ero-sensei? Asked Naruto. Jiraiya shook his head as he chuckled to himself, we do the same thing the village has always done. We rebuild, bigger and better than ever. Naruto sighed. I think, I will take a moment to myself here on the ground first. Jiraiya's eyes misted up as he saw another young teenage blonde in a stripped tracksuit in Naruto's place, also pleading for a moment's rest. Take all the time that you need, kid, said Jiraiya absent-mindedly, leaving Naruto by himself as he turned and looked around at the damage done to his home. That night, Konoha Council Chambers. The clan heads were all present, a couple of them wearing bandages, but they were all still there. Important Jonin such as Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma were present as well. Kakashi had even shown up on time for once. The trio of village elders were present. The Anbu commander and all of the Anbu captains were there. Jiraiya was the one who had called the meeting. The civilian side of the council was the only people not present. The shinobi side did not want nor need their opinion in this kind of matter. Jiraiya sealed the chamber's door with a special seal and turned to face the rest of the people in the room. We all know why we are here, started Jiraiya. Hiruzen-sensei has fallen in battle to Orochimaru, who had the aid of the reanimated first and second Hokage. Danzo's lone eye was trained on Jiraiya, but the Toad Sage ignored the man looking at him. Obviously we can't continue on without a Hokage, it would send a sign to the rest of the world that we are weak, continued Jiraiya. Then it sounds like we need someone to become our new Hokage. I am more than willing to fill the void, said Danzo. Kakashi rolled his eye and Asuma chuckled at the bandaged man's words, causing the older man to look at them sternly. Shikaku Nara yawned loudly and said, you want us to replace an old man with another old man? That is not the kind of action that will tell the other villages that we are still strong enough not to mess with. Danzo glared at the Nara clan head but didn't say anything. He knew that he would not gain support by arguing in front of the rest of the council. I agree with shadow puppets over there, said Sum, her wild hair shifting as she moved her head. We have so many S-ranked shinobi on our roster, why not go with one who isn't going to die of old age in the next couple of years? Danzo frowned, his lone sign of his emotional outrage at the Inuzuka clan head's words. So, who would you suggest? Kakashi asked Shikaku. Kakashi shook his head. I don't believe that I'm ready just yet. Eagle, the Anbu commander, cut in and said, isn't it clear? The only person who is qualified is Lord Jiraiya here. All eyes turned to Jiraiya, who shook his head. I don't want the job, but a Sannin isn't a bad place to start. Tsunade would be perfect. She would get to be close to her cousin Naruto as well as help improve the village's medical staff. Is it wise for us to really trust one of the Sannin with our village, when one of their own just laid waste to our village? Questioned Danzo. Is she not nothing more than a wrinkled corpse at the moment? And that's somehow worse than you. She'll recover, but you're nothing more than a crippled fossil with one foot in the grave, retorted Jiraiya. I think we need to wait until Lady Tsunade is back on her feet. We can nominate her, but she still has to accept, said Eagle. We do need to know our options, added Shikaku. If we are looking for people qualified, I believe that my name should be in the mix, spoke up Hiashi Hyuga. So the short list is simple: Tsunade, Kakashi's lazy, Hiashi, Danzo, and myself, said Jiraiya. There was a round of agreement before the room grew quiet once more, and Danzo asked, the boy, how long has he been practicing his Mokuton abilities? Kakashi answered that several months now. Shibi pushed his glasses up. That is most impressive. Naruto Uzumaki must be more talented than any of us could have guessed for him to progress so quickly with a fabled technique. Danzo tapped his cane on the ground. As the third Hokage said, our top priority at this point is to make sure that Naruto remains loyal to this village. With that type of power at his disposal, he could quite literally be the second coming of our first Hokage. Yeah, and that is why you are to stay away from him, glared Jiraiya. You act as if I would do something to harm the boy, countered Danzo, a calm expression as always on his face. You make a single move towards him and I will come down on you with all of my power. Orochimaru and a pair of reanimated Hokages were barely able to match me for mere minutes. Do you think you would fare better? Spat Jiraiya. This is outrageous. How dare you talk to a Konoha elder like this, said Danzo in mock anger. I am on Lord Jiraiya's side. You make a move on the boy and I will not hesitate to cut you down. Your backdoor moves are well known at this point, said Kakashi. His little orange book was nowhere to be seen and his single eye was trained on the bandaged elder. The meeting was pretty much over at that point, and thus Jiraiya ended the seal that secured the room and the members of the meeting made their way out. Lord Jiraiya, I will be sure to keep an eye on Naruto in case Danzo tries to make a move on him with his nei, said Kakashi as they were the last two in the room. Don't worry about it, Naruto is going to become my apprentice soon. I will live him on your team, but his training will mostly be handed by me at this point, said Jiraiya. I didn't think that I did that bad of a job in training him these last couple months. What is the real reason that you wish to take over Naruto's training? Asked Kakashi in a serious tone. There is a threat that has been lurking in the background for a minute now. I first picked up on them when I was trailing Orochimaru for months. They're not a normal threat like the cloud building up their shinobi reserves. No, this group is different as they have only 9 members. But each member of this group is an S-ranked shinobi, said Jiraiya, equally as serious. 9 shinobi on the level of the cage. That's unheard of, commented Kakashi. I know. Now imagine the leader, a man powerful enough to keep 8 others who are that powerful in check. You might be able to handle a couple members, but Naruto needs someone like me who can not just match one of them, but make them think twice about engaging, said Jiraiya. Kakashi nodded his head. Okay then. 2 days later. The bright sky, the beautiful warm weather, the birds chirping loudly. You would never think that the third Hokage's funeral had just ended. Naruto stood looking at the memorial with sadness, but there was no tears in his eyes. You were past your prime and you still had it in you to fight 2 former Hokage, unbelievable, said Naruto to nobody. You humored me when nobody else would, you believed in me when you had no reason to, continued Naruto, even at your age, it feels like you were taken too soon. I have so many questions, So many things I wanted to experience with you there. I wish you were still here. I want to be angry that you got yourself killed, but that is what you signed up for, that is why you were the Hokage. He would be so proud to hear you understand that, Naruto, said a voice from behind him. I didn't see you here at the funeral, said Naruto, his eyes still trained on the stone that read Hiruzen Sarutobi, the eternal Hokage. I didn't want to come. It doesn't feel real that sensei is no longer with us, but at the same time, I know that he's finally getting that rest in retirement that he deserves, replied the voice. You think so? Asked Naruto. I know so, said Tsunade as she walked up to Naruto and pulled him into a tight one-armed hug. So, what exactly is our mission? Asked Naruto to Kakashi as Team 7 all stood at the main gates to Konoha, the mostly rebuilt village in the background. You could still hear the faint hammering of nails, the rough scrapping of metal on metal and wood as the finishing touches of the rebuild were being completed. I wasn't going to go into detail until the client arrived, as this should be a rather straightforward guard detail mission that he can explain, but since you asked so nicely, I guess I can spill some of the details, said Kakashi as he put away his book and looked at the trio of young shinobi before himself. The leader of the hidden waterfall village requested a team to escort him back to his village. With Naruto getting the Chunin rank, Sasuke being on probation for the Chunin rank and Sakura being in the Chunin exams finals, Team 7 was given the mission. You make it sound like you're not coming with us, Sensei, said Sakura. That's because he's not, said a voice that Naruto was very familiar with at this point. Lady Tsunade, said Sakura in awe at seeing the living legend before her. Sasuke didn't say anything and Naruto could only narrow his eyes and groan. What do you want, you old bat? Asked Naruto to the shock of Sakura, who gasped in disbelief at the level of disrespect shown to their new Hokage. I come to see my cousin off on a mission and this is how I get treated, fumed Tsunade as she shook her fist at Naruto, who rolled his eyes. You came out here to baby me like you do at every chance that you get, didn't you? Retorted Naruto. Tsunade pouted. Maybe. Naruto smiled and walked closer to his lone living relative in the village and hugged her tightly, an action that she returned immediately. When they broke apart, she pulled up his headband and kissed him on the forehead before pulling the headband back down. You be careful out there. Naruto nodded. I will. Tsunade turned and left without looking back at the new Chunin, something that he was thankful for if he was being honest. As Naruto turned back to his squad, a taller teenager with long flat brown hair, wearing a green shirt with tan pants and blue ninja sandals arrived. Hi, my name is Shibuki, leader of the village hidden in the waterfalls, said the teen, his voice shaky and uncertain. Naruto stepped right up to him, his hand extended and had to hold back his laughter as the man flinched as the hand reached out to him. Oh right, a handshake, laughed Shibuki as he reached out to shake Naruto's hand after realizing that Naruto wasn't going to hurt him. They shook hands and Naruto said, My name is Naruto Uzumaki, the guy with the black hair is Sasuke and the pink-haired girl is Sakura. Sakura gave a small wave and Sasuke just gave a small nod, both of them were eager to get his mission started. Let's head out now, said Naruto to Shibuki, who nodded and the three Konoha shinobi went into a triangle formation around Shibuki, with him in the middle and they leapt off into the trees, off to the hidden waterfall village. With Tsunade, by the time she made it back up to her new office, she was greeted with a series of people in her new office. Why is it that nobody ever comes in here with sake? Grumbled Tsunade as she saw Danzo, Hiashi, Jiraiya, and the Suna shinobi Baki in her office. Lady Hokage, it is an honor to have this meeting with you, said Baki, his half-covered face, dipping in a bow. Would have been great for me to know about the meeting, said Tsunade as she took a seat at her desk. So, what brings you to Konoha? We've already turned over all of the shinobi that we captured during the invasion for the agreed-upon ransom. Danzo spoke. It seems Suna realized that without us backing them, Iwa and Kumo are breathing down their necks. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Iwa already has started recalling all of their Jonin and Anbu back to the village. their forces will be mobilized within a week, 2 weeks at max. Baki frowned. I know, which is why I am here. We want to reinstate the allegiance, at nearly any cost. Hiashi added, which is why we have gathered her, Lady Tsunade. Danzo represents the elders and civilians of the council. While I represent the shinobi side, Jiraiya is here as top-ranking shinobi in our village. So, this is a quick abridged council meeting to see if Suna can offer us something worth re-establishing the allegiance. Asked Tsunade. The men in the room nodded and Tsunade said, okay, so let's get down to business. Why should we not allow the other village to wipe you off the face of the earth? Your failed invasion brought about the death of my sensei, Hiruzen. Why should I agree to your terms? Baki pulled out a scroll and presented it to Tsunade, who opened it, reading the contents of the scroll before dropped it on her desk. This is meaningless to me, said Tsunade. I could care less about a 100-year allegiance, a lack of import or export taxes, and several forbidden Suna jutsu. Baki smirked and let out a huffing chuckle. I told the council that you wouldn't even entertain that type of offer, so let me lay the biggest offer on the table. Tamari. Danzo's eye narrowed and he asked, you want a political marriage? Absolutely not, said Hiashi. I say we let the man finish his offer, said Jiraiya. You would offer Konoha, one of the strongest shinobi in your villages. For what? Asked Tsunade. Baki continued on with his offer. Tamari would be part of a joint shinobi program. We give you one of best and you give us basically anyone you want. If you wanted it to be a political marriage, I can amend the agreement for that. The council foresaw something like that being on the table as well. They wanted to pair Tamari with the blonde kid who stopped Gaara in the invasion. Hiashi folded his arms over his chest. You want to pair Tamari, the daughter of your fourth Kazekage, with a relative of our first, second, and current fifth Hokage. Why? That would only make our village stronger, as the potential for their offspring would be incredible. Danzo asked, because if Naruto and Tamari are to wed, Naruto would feel some kind of way if Temari's home and family were being attacked. Baki just shrugged and Tsunade put her hands under her chin and rested her head on them. Okay, I can get behind the joint shinobi program, I will not force a marriage though. If Naruto and Tamari end up liking each other, we can discuss that if it comes up. I will send over 20 Chunin and 4 Jonin, you will send over 10 Chunin on top of Tamari. Danzo couldn't help but ask, how did you arrive at those numbers? The village will be losing manpower. Because I'm also taking their offer in the scroll, said Tsunade as she opened up her top drawer in her desk and pulled out a new scroll, opening it and started writing up the terms that she wanted. Baki couldn't do anything but look on as his village's fate was hanging on by a thread as the Hidden Rock village prepared to launch their attack on his home. Back with Team 7, Naruto was fed up with Shibuki already. The man had been scared of a piece of moss hanging from a tree, a frog that jumped too close to him, and most recently a bird that flew overheard. The man was a giant coward who Naruto was surprised hadn't been scared by his own shadow at this point. So, Shibuki, what is your village like? I've never heard of any shinobi from your village, asked Sakura, trying to break up the silence. Well, we are a smaller village, we don't have a caste of S-ranked shinobi like Konoha does, but we hold our own. Most of our houses are on the edge of a lake, answered Shibuki honestly while also giving no real details. Sakura frowned as she put together that she basically got nothing, and the final stretch of the mission passed in silence until Shibuki stopped the group as the bushes shook just ahead of the group and outran a young boy and girl who greeted Shibuki by name. Shibuki tilted his head at seeing the young children from his village outside of the village. What are you two doing out here? Mom told us to clean up the river, said the boy as he lifted a plastic bag in his hand to show that it was filled with trash. Shibuki smiled brightly. Well, guess what? Your job is done, as these Konoha guys will finish that task for you. Sakura went to shout at Shibuki, but Naruto held up his hand to stop her. Shibuki, if we clean it up the trash in this river, our fee doubles. Shibuki bit his lip before nodded. It will be worth it. if I can stop the kids from doing it themselves. His words made the kids cheer his name, and Naruto turned to his teammates. Let's get this over with. Sooner we finish, the sooner we can go home. In Suna, the streets were nearly empty, a first for a Thursday afternoon, but Tamari wasn't going to complain. She was just picking up some imported sushi and fish dishes from an island near the Hidden Mist village. It was kind of pricey. But it was also a treat from her brother. It was not every day that you found out that you were promoted to Chunin for surviving a failed invasion that saw your people be slaughtered like helpless sheep. Kankuro had decided to fork over the money to feed the family. She leapt up onto the roof of a nearby building and quickly bounced from rooftop to rooftop as she made her way back home. Home was a bit weird. The lack of her father's cold, overbearing presence was not missed, but at the same time, it was a constant in her life for as long as she could remember. It had been a familiar part of her life that was simply gone, never to be experienced, seen, or heard from again. She opened her front door and Kankuro was sitting on the couch in the living room, reading something that she couldn't make out. But based on the green lining of the material, it was a scroll on puppet making. "You've returned," said a cold, emotionless voice from the stairs. Tamari had to prevent herself from jumping at the sound of the voice, because the owner still to this moment, kinda scared the shit out of her, if she was being honest. But she also had to resist the urge to say, "Yes, father," because in that single moment, Gaara sounded like their dad more than ever. "I have," said Tamari to her youngest brother, "with the sushi as I said I would." "Is it normal for people to announce the completion of their tasks?" asked Gaara, the young red-haired man sounding confused for a moment. "Kankuro, Tamari is back, I am telling you like I said I would," said Gaara in a slightly raised voice before he looked back to Tamari. "Did I do that correct?" Tamari let a small smile grace her face. "You did great, Gaara." Kankuro got up from the couch and asked Tamari, "Did you get the stuff?" Tamari held up the bag of food in her hand and the trio of siblings made their way to the dining room, a room that Tamari and Kankuro were more familiar with than Gaara. His antisocial behavior had made him skip on the simple things in life, like family dinner, or talking to people without the intent to murder them. Tamari ripped the bag open and passed Kankuro the order of fried octopus salad. Gaara had ordered shrimp ramen, something about a blonde monster who loved the stuff, while Tamari had ordered the sushi platter for herself. Gaara took a seat to her right and she couldn't put her finger on it, but something about her baby brother seemed a bit different. It took her a moment to realize that the large sand gourd that usually rested his back was missing. "This is nice," commented Tamari as the three siblings all sat at the same table, almost like they were actually a loving and caring family. Tamari wouldn't lie, she loved Gaara with all of her heart, but she was still afraid of him. A week of good behavior doesn't clean up years of bloodlust, but she was more than willing to try and connect with him. Tamari bowed her head in prayer before she dug in with gusto, matched by Kankuro, while Gaara ate slowly and under control. Tamari was about halfway through her food when she noticed that Gaara had stopped eating, his hands trembling slightly. "What's wrong, Gaara?" she asked him. "Something is wrong, I can feel it in the shifting of the sand outside the village," said Gaara, his jaw clenching as he closed his eyes. Tamari looked at him with concern, but she felt a large spike right before there was a large cloud sand seen through the window. She switched her hand on the sash on her outfit and in a burst of smoke, she was holding her large battle fan. She opened the window and threw her fan into the air. Her fan caught the wind and floated until she jumped onto it and used her chakra to push it towards the edge of the village. She arrived at the large wall that made up their watchtower and she looked out of the desert, seeing the large shinobi forces. "I was shinobi," reported the Anbu on guard to Gaara who had appeared next to Tamari, the large sand gourd on his back again. "How many?" asked Gaara. Tamari could count a couple hundred, but considering that Suna only had 255 fully healthy shinobi available in the village, Suna was not exactly in a situation to handle this type of assault. their best hope would be that the allegiance with Konoha had gone well and they could get some shinobi over to their location in a hurry. Have a hawk sent to Konoha asking for assistance. I will lead the charge against these fools who seek to invade our home, commanded Gaara before he leapt off the wall, sand rising into the air to catch him. Gaara raised his hands and a tsunami of sand rose up behind him before rushing forward just as a massive wave of water would. It didn't bother him, morphing around his body as it crashed down on invading forces. Tamari looked at the collective wall of earth that sprung up to counter the wave of sand and she held her breath as Gaara's sand struggled to overwhelm the invaders. Tamari jumped up into the air, channeling roughly a third of her reserves into this single attack. Her fan opened all the way as she let the chakra build up before unleashing it in a massive windstorm that slammed into the wall of earth created by the Iwa shinobi and shredded their cover. Tamari landed with a huff and she watched as the sand controlled by her brother attacked with renewed anger and aggression. Hold on Gaara, help is on the way, whispered Tamari. Despite not believing the words herself, Suna was resting on his shoulders and his shoulders alone. With Team 7, the trio of Konoha ninja had just finished cleaning up the river when the three of them all shared a look before nodding at one another. Sasuke jumped high into the air above the water as Sakura leapt towards the children who had remained near the river to watch the shinobi work. Naruto stood on the surface of the river and pulled out a kunai to deflect the spray of kunai that were sent at him, before throwing a kunai at the source of the spray. The thrower managed to avoid Naruto's kunai by jumping up into the air, but Sasuke unleashed a fireball at the perfect moment and the flames fried the attacker. Sasuke dropped to the water again and said, "That was too easy." Naruto agreed and in a burst of smoke, was replaced by Sakura and the two kids, as he caught the wrist of the man who had tried to assault Sakura. He had spiky black hair, a waterfall headband that had slash through it. He wore an all-blue outfit and shinobi slippers. He also wore a look of shock at seeing Naruto gripping his hand so easily, Naruto's eyes meeting his own. "Why you brat?" snarled the man before a wooden stake exploded from the ground and into this neck from behind, killing the man. Naruto turned around to see Sasuke had dealt with a female shinobi while he had finished off his opponent. The trio of dead shinobi were all missing ninja, deflectors that nobody would miss based on their pathetic skills. Naruto was drawn from his thoughts by the flapping of wings as a hawk circled above him, before making a dive towards the arm that he had extended for it to land on. It was from the Hokage's office if the seal on the scroll was anything to go by. Naruto took the scroll from the hawk that immediately took back off to the skies and he opened the scroll and started reading the message. A flare of chakra and the scroll went up in flames and Naruto turned to his two teammates to give them the updated mission information. "We're allies with Suna once more. We are to head there now and help defend them from an Iwa invading force," said Naruto as he fished into his pocket, pulling out a shinobi food pills. He took one himself before flipping one to Sakura and Sasuke. They consumed them immediately and Naruto could feel their chakra levels spike up beyond what they usually were. "We're about 25 minutes out if we run at full speed. We need to get there as fast as possible," said Naruto. "If you can't keep up, fall back and arrive when you can." Sasuke and Sakura nodded and the trio of them disappeared in a blur, leaving behind the dead bodies for the hidden waterfall to deal with. Leaping up into the trees, the three Konoha shinobi raced through the forest that surrounded Waterfall Country and into the land of grass. They sped through the small country, flying through the trees and briefly the wetlands before taking off into the trees once more. It was weird as within minutes of when they passed what Naruto knew was the border of grass and rain, the bright sunny sky started to darken with heavy rain clouds. Lightning split the sky and Naruto felt his heartbeat skyrocket as he felt a nervous chill tremble down his spine. Glancing around, Naruto tried to find the cause for such feeling but couldn't find it. The sky darkened even more and the sun was completely hidden behind a wall of clouds, and then it began to rain. The first of the droplets were so soft that Naruto barely felt them touch his head, his thick hair soaking up the water instantly. But as the downpour started to get heavier, Naruto could feel something in the water. Each drop contained a tiny little chakra signature. Sensing chakra was weird, or it was at least to Naruto. You didn't quite feel it, like touching nothing. No, it was nothing like the 5 standard sense at all. Sensing chakra was like having a spider web around you made up of your chakra. A large net that when other sources of chakra came into contact with, would shake and draw your attention. Well, right now, Naruto's web was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane, his body was tensing for battle, but there was nobody in sight. What was worse was that the chakra in the rain felt so peaceful and almost pure. Like this is how chakra was supposed to feel, even if this chakra's feel was completely unique. Do you feel that? Asked Sakura, whose medical training was making her more and more sensitive to chakra and the feel of it. Yeah, the chakra in the rain, said Naruto. Sasuke's eyes opened and closed, his Sharingan revealed and activated as he looked at the falling drops of rain before looking up at the sky, seeing the connection. The chakra in the rain, it's not normal chakra. It's not even an elemental nature transformation, I'm not sure what it is, commented Sasuke as he allowed his eyes to revert back to normal as the trio of them continued to race through the trees. Do it feel kind of familiar to you? Asked Sakura. Naruto didn't say anything, but Sasuke's eyes flicked to Naruto and then Sakura, giving her a nod to confirm his agreement. The chakra, while not an exact match, had a similar feel to Naruto's when he used his Mokuton ability. It was probably something to do with the ability to warp and bend nature to your will, something that was clearly being done with the rain. Naruto still couldn't shake the feeling of danger and slowly shifted the group to the east, slipping out of the land of rain and into the land of fire. And it was not a coincidence that the rain did not follow them once they left the land of rain. The chakra and rain that coated them dispelled in a flare of chakra as Naruto led Sasuke and Sakura into the land of rivers. That was a smart detour, said Sasuke as he pulled even with Naruto, Sakura still half a step behind the two of them. It was needed, we were getting closer to aim, I didn't want to take a chance running into whoever was causing the rain. They had extremely potent chakra and unbelievably control to cover the entire country in rain, replied Naruto. You think it was Hanzo? Asked Sasuke, his mind thinking of the most powerful hidden rain shinobi. I don't think so, he was never mentioned to be able to control the weather before, said Naruto as the trees in river country started to thin out and they leapt over the river that separated the land of rivers and the land of wind. Heading south, the trees ended and the desert began, forcing the trio to run through the sand. Naruto knew to coat the bottom of his feet in chakra to avoid slipping on the hot sand and made sure to let his squad mates know as well. You have to treat the sand like water walking, he said as they raced through the sandy landscape. Glancing back, he noticed that both of them had followed his instructions, the three of them racing over the sand. As they got closer to Suna, Naruto had them slow down as he felt multiple new chakra sources creep onto the edge of his sensor web. Now only moving at an average walk speed, Naruto said, okay, the plan is simple. Sakura hit them with a genjutsu, Sasuke unloads some fire on them and I will try to trap them. The three of them split up, Sakura taking up position behind a sand dune as she wove through hand signs, twisting her chakra until it was flat like a blanket before letting it roll out over the makeshift camp that the Iwa shinobi had set up. Genjutsu was more than hand signs and chakra, it was not like ninjutsu where pumping it full of chakra made it work, no, genjutsu required mental strength, chakra control, and precision. As Sakura allowed her chakra to flood the camp, it wasn't overbearing like Naruto's or even noticeable like Sasuke's. No, it was like soft droplets of rain, slowly making its way toward the target. Sakura could feel her chakra touch people, slipping into their chakra pools, her tiny sliver of chakra almost like a needle in the haystack. Now that she had her targets, she focused on what illusion she was going to cast, this was the hardest part. Keeping her chakra inside the other person's body while she actually cast the genjutsu, hence why you needed mental strength to be good at genjutsu past the basics. Sakura decided that she would double everyone's vision and basically sent her sliver of chakra up to their eyes, before allowing it to spike, creating the illusion of doubles. She could hear the mass panic of the section of Iowa shinobi that she had caught in her illusion and rolled away from the sand dune, racing along the outskirts of the battle to another hiding place. As she was running, she felt a skin-blistering heat wash over the area as a bright ball of fire rained down on the Iowa shinobi. Some of them tried to run, but a massive stone wall rose up around the battlefield and they were trapped inside, getting cooked to death by the flames. Eventually the fire died down and Sakura watched as Naruto slammed his hands onto the ground and wooden spikes erupted all over the battleground, stabbing all of the Iowa shinobi, dead or alive. Naruto had basically just confirmed almost 60 kills in an instant. It was both scary that he could do something like that so easily and relieving that he was on their side. Brutal, commented Sakura as Naruto approached her. Sasuke was on his way to her location as well. It's us or them, and I choose us, said Naruto as he stomped his foot on the ground and the wooden spikes all dropped back into the sand-covered ground, leaving no trace of what had caused the mass death. I know, but it still is weird to think that anyone can go about killing this many people without a care in the world, said Sakura. Sasuke grit his teeth and turned his back on her, causing Naruto to grit his teeth and say, let's keep pushing. This was a backup squad of 60, that means most of the Iowa forces have already began their assault. Naruto took point again as the three of them ran towards Suna once more, every step getting them closer to this massive presence. The chakra in the air was so angry and seemingly hungry that it washed over the trio of Konoha shinobi with ease, even at their distance. Sakura shivered as she felt the chakra, her nerves getting the best of her until Naruto flared his chakra and the cold angry presence was replaced with the warm sunny relaxed feeling of Naruto's chakra. He barely spared her more than a glance and she gave him a small smile. Naruto stopped as they approached the edge of the battlefield. The sand was soaked in blood, there were body parts laying randomly, the bitter smell of burnt flesh was in the air. Sakura, I want you and Sasuke to wrap around and make it to Suna. Let them know that we are here. Once you get there, Sasuke, I need you to find a wind user and have them send a blast of wind at your fireball jutsu, it should get whoever is left over, said Naruto, his eyes morphing from blue to forest green. Sasuke and Sakura took off to the right, away from the majority of Iowa's forces, leaving Naruto alone. Which was great for him, but terrible for the Iowa shinobi forces. Naruto released his chakra, allowing it to flood the air as he forced the Iowa forces to pay attention to him. He flashed through hand signs and called out, Mokuton release, containment prison, and when he slammed his hands on the ground, a large wall of wood sprung up and circled the battlefield much like he had done earlier with the earth wall on the 60 reserve Iowa shinobi. But this wall was different. As the Iowa shinobi tried to climb it, they found that the wood absorbed their chakra and they could scale it or destroy it with anything other than brute strength. The sand inside the containment started to lash out, stabbing and crushing the Iowa shinobi with a rigid that made Naruto know that Gaara was nearing his end. Fortunately for Gaara, Naruto saw a giant ball of fire descend on the people in the wooden prison. Unfortunately for the shinobi of Iowa, the wind bullets that slammed into the giant fireball from behind made the red flames turn white as the fireball turned firestorm slammed into the remaining forces and Naruto wrinkled his nose as he smelt the people being cooked alive. He made sure to maintain his wall, trapping all of the Iowa shinobi inside with the flames until he was certain everyone was dead. The wood sank back in the ground and Naruto looked at the charred stains and remains of the Iowa shinobi. There was over 100 burnt corpses in front of him, but Naruto was looked past that as the sand rose and swallowed the entire battlefield, burying any and all evidence of the battle. Sasuke and Sakura regrouped with Naruto, the three of them slowly walking up to the great sand walls of Suna. That battle was a bit too easy, said Sakura. Sasuke shrugged. Not many people can stand up to the might of elites like us. Naruto shook his head. This was nothing more than fodder, we slaughter a large amount of genin. I couldn't feel a single chakra level above genin level. Sasuke frowned. Why would Iwa send a bunch of genin to attack Suna? That's a good question, said a female voice from above, causing the three Konoha shinobi to look up as Temari glided down to them. Naruto let a small smile on his face as he stepped forward and extended his hand to Temari, who extended her hand to shake Naruto's hand. Their hands separated and Naruto gestured for Sasuke and Sakura to walk over. It's good to see you again. Wish it could be under better circumstances, said Naruto with a pointed glance back towards the place where they had just killed over 100 Iwa genin. I agree, but this is the life that we choose, replied Temari, a grim smile on her face. Her clothes were scuffed up and dirty, her skin was caked in sweat and her chakra levels were low. Naruto nodded and he turned as the sand next to them rose to reveal Gaara's form, Naruto smiling at his Chunin exam opponent. Gaara, it's good to see you, how ya been buddy, said Naruto with a bright smile on his face. The edges of Gaara's lips twitched and Temari looked at her brother in amazement, that might as well been an ear-to-ear grin for her brother. Uzumaki, I have been well. Our battle has really helped me regain control over Shukaku, said Gaara in a dry emotionless tone. I've also been able to connect with my siblings for the first time. That's great to hear, said Naruto as he nodded at Gaara's words. I actually have something to give to you. Gaara watched as Naruto opened his hand, palm facing the sky, and a wooden circle morphed out of his hand. If you ever have any issues with the beast inside or you just want some sleep, put this bracelet on and it will suppress Shukaku until you take it off, said Naruto. Gaara reached out and grasped the wood bracelet with an look of awe on his face, the first emotion that he had shown in years. I don't know how to thank you, said Gaara, his eyes fixed on the wood bracelet that he was now holding in his hands. Even just the touch of it caused the chakra flowing through his hands to get ate up by the wooden circle. Temari looked at Naruto. You're too kind, we were enemies not that long ago, why would you do something like this for us, for Gaara? Naruto shrugged. Gaara and I are more alike than anyone will ever know, I can't let someone like us suffer if I can help it. Sasuke and Sakura remained silent but had so many questions, like how was Naruto like Gaara in any way, shape or form? So, when do you think that Iwa will mount their real attack? Asked Sasuke. Gaara hummed for a moment. I am not sure, they knew that we did not have the manpower to overcome their genin forces. Even with my control over sand, I do not believe we would have won that battle. Suna is much weaker now than any previous point in history. Sasuke chewed over the information. If you're lacking manpower, that only a couple hundred genin is a serious threat to you guys, what did you guys offer Konoha to get the allegiance back in place? Gaara said nothing and Temari shrugged. I don't know, it would have to be something valuable enough that you guys were willing to put the allegiance back in place within a single day. Naruto turned around and looked out at horizon with narrowed eyes, picking up on the familiar feeling of Kakashi in the distance along with the guy who had half his face covered from Suna who had been at the Chunin exams. Screams erupted from the masses as flames shot down on them before a strong blast of wind slammed into the flames from behind and supercharged the flames, leaving nothing behind in the limited spot where the flames had managed to hit. It was much smaller than the flames that had scorched the earth less than 10 minutes ago. Sasuke dropped to the ground, falling on his hands and knees, panting heavily as he struggled to draw in air. Breathing fire was a lot harder to do when you're running out of chakra and can feel the burning sensation boiling the air in your lungs. I don't think I have too many more of those left in me, admitted Sasuke to Naruto. Naruto barely paid him a second glance before molding his chakra inside of his body and slamming his hands down on the ground, sending spikes of earth all throughout the battlefield. A gong was heard and all of the able shinobi retreated for the day and Naruto dropped to the ground exhausted as well. It seemed like Iwa was done for the day and Naruto really appreciated it, because he wasn't sure how much longer he could last either. Sasuke was low on chakra and he couldn't take any more soldier pills to boost his chakra either. He had already taken 2 of them and a third would be risking his coils. Chakra was meant to flow freely like water in a river, but the chakra generated by the soldier pills was harsh, coarse, and cold. It was unnatural for the body, and extended use of that pill-generated chakra over your regular chakra could leave scratches on your chakra coils, leaving them weaker over time. "You're gassed too, huh?" stated Sasuke. Sasuke was correct in his estimation. Naruto knew that he was getting closer to running on fumes than he would have liked to admit. But there was a reason that it had been spikes of earth rather than spikes of wood. He didn't have the chakra to create that many wood spikes. Sure, the wood spikes would have absorbed the chakra of whoever they hit, but it was a matter of hitting the right target. Anyone who had enough chakra worth stealing wouldn't have been caught off guard by a spike to begin with. "Sakura is still back at the village with Kakashi. I think it's time that we return back to Suna as well," Sasuke suggested Naruto as he climbed back to his feet and offered his hand to Sasuke, pulling the Uchiha back up to his feet. "I think it's insane how many genin and chunin that Iwa have to throw at us. Wave after wave of disposable shinobi is unheard of," said Sasuke as he started to walk alongside of Naruto. "It actually is kind of scary, because if they have this much fodder, imagine what they're holding back. Their goal to wear down Suna might have worked if we didn't arrive when we did," admitted Naruto. "You don't seem all that torn up about being in Suna," noted Sasuke, a sly smile on his face. "The weather is not as bad as they make it out to be. Sure, it's hot, but I'd rather be hot than cold. Plus, once you get the hang of controlling your chakra, you can push away the sand with ease," replied Naruto. "So, it has nothing to do with the blonde girl with 4 ponytails, the same girl who wields that giant metal fan?" questioned Sasuke. Naruto stopped walking and blinked at Sasuke's question. "Huh. I guess she's nice enough, but what does Temari have to do with anything?" "Naruto, half of Suna uses a fan and is blonde. Nobody named anyone," teased Sasuke, ignoring the heated glare that Naruto directed his way. "At least I can talk to a girl. Half the village thinks you're and the other half thinks you're gay," countered Naruto. "Not that there's anything wrong with that." Sasuke scoffed. "I'm cautious. If anything, Itachi left me alive. But who's to say that he would leave a girlfriend or wife alive? What about future children? If I'm not strong enough to stop him from taking away my family a second time, there is no point in starting a family." "Fair point," said Naruto as Sasuke did make some good points. Itachi was a unique individual. There is no reason to try and understand what the genocidal Uchiha would or would not allow for Sasuke to do at this point. "So, what do you think is the next move for Iwa?" asked Sasuke after they walked back to Suna in silence for a couple of minutes. "I'm not sure. I might be a chunin, but I am only slightly more experienced in combat than you," admitted Naruto. "I honestly believe that they were hoping to tire out Suna with their waves. Suna is weaker than ever, and yet you and I have destroyed their attack forces so far." "We're getting tried ourselves though," said Sasuke. "Maybe, but Gaara is doing his best with his sand to keep any of their forces. They can't enter the city, and we've held this outpost by ourselves for 3 days. Whatever they had planned, it hasn't worked. If I was them, I would be circling around an attack from the southeast instead of trying to march towards Suna," said Naruto. Said Sasuke, unclear of how to reply to that. While he and Naruto were clearly way more skilled than the Iwa genin and rare chunin that had been sent against them, he didn't know how he would react to continued defeat. That was a bit of a lie. Sasuke knew that if he was getting his handed to him over and over again by a pair of 13-year-old boys, he would be absolutely furious. But, then again, he was not the leader of an army. Glancing up at the afternoon sky, Sasuke was regretting wearing a black shirt as it was rather hot in his opinion. Suna was still a long ways away too, another unfortunate fact in his opinion. And since he was so low on chakra, he couldn't even channel chakra through his feet to keep the hot sand out of his sandals. And worst of all, Naruto wasn't walking super slow either, he was walking like he needed to be somewhere. And Sasuke knew that if he complained to Naruto, he would simply move faster and force Sasuke to keep up with him. The Mokuton user was a giant, but then again he was a senju. The one thing Sasuke knew about the senju was that per his father, the only good senju was a dead one. Suna. Temari. Manning the wall was one of the most important jobs in the Suna shinobi force at the moment. That is why Temari made it her job to be up here as much as possible, because sadly she was one of the strongest remaining shinobi left in the village. Well, that and the fact that nobody wanted to be up here more than a few minutes with Gaara. The red-haired boy had been up here since the first attack, his body and mind were used to going day after day without sleeping. He didn't eat much, nobody in Suna was overly water dependent, he was practically built for this task. They'll be fine, said Gaara, pulling her out of her thoughts. Who? She couldn't help but ask who he was referring to. Both of her brothers were in the village. The pair of Konoha shinobi, they aren't going to fall to the weak masses of the Iwa shinobi, answered Gaara. They're not my concern right now, Gaara, dismissed Temari. I need to make sure that the village is still standing until my last breath leaves my body. Interesting, I can hear your heartbeat skip, stated Gaara. Lying to me is impossible. You might not care for the Uchiha, but what about the blonde Konoha boy? The question was a loaded one, she was really unsure if she liked him all that much. He had been sweat to her so far and he had given her the desert rose back in Konoha. And he had gone out of his way not to kill Gaara, even giving him a method to sleep if Gaara chose to. But he was not part of her village, she was unsure of what to make of him without spending more time with him. And not on the battlefield, but in a more normal setting. Unfortunately, they were shinobi and would most likely never get that chance. He's very nice, but I'm unsure of what to really make of him, said Temari honestly. I find him to be attractive, but I don't know him well enough to really sway one way or the other. He likes you, said Gaara. He does? Asked Temari. How do you know? He asked me if you were involved with anyone, replied Gaara. I told him that you were involved with the village and your family only, but you had no male suitors at this time. Temari's right eye twitched. We're at war and you're trying to find me a boyfriend. Gaara was not fazed by her anger. Yes, and Uzumaki is the best possible choice for you. He is strong enough to protect you should the occasion arise. You seem to have a lot of respect for him, noted Temari. Yes, he was able to not only defeat me, but also the demon inside of me. There is nobody I hold in higher regard than Uzumaki, confirmed Gaara. You sure you don't have a crush on him? Teased Temari. Gaara blinked. Uzumaki might be attractive, but he is not my type. I like them a little more female. The edges of his lips bent upwards, a slight smile on his usually emotionless face. It took Temari a second to realize that her brother had just made a joke, resulting in her smiling as well. As the sun started to set over Suna, Gaara stiffened and said, a group approaches from the northeast. Temari readied her fan, unsure of how an enemy force managed to get so close, only to relax as she realized it was a group of Konoha Chunin, which was a massive relief. Temari was as prideful as any other shinobi in the world from any other nation, but she was prideful, not delusional. She knew that the average Konoha Chunin was easily worth more than the average Suna Chunin. And if she was going to be really honest about the situation of her village, probably worth more than the average Suna Jonin at that moment. As a result of the failed invasion, the massacre of their forces in the failed invasion, and the death of their Kage at the hands of Tsunade and Naruto, had caused Suna to give out a lot of promotions. She was part of that massive overlay of promotions, bumping up from a genin to the Chunin rank. Her brother Gaara was on the very short list for the next Kage. A boy who had suffered defeat at the same boy who had helped kill their father. The same boy who Gaara wanted her to date. How badly did Naruto beat her brother? Gaara glanced at her. Shall I go down there to meet them? Or do you want to? The question was a little troubling to her. She was a Chunin and while the daughter of the previous Kage, she was not the leading shinobi of her village. It was probably Baki sensei or maybe even her brother Gaara. Gaara took her silence as a negative response and disappeared in a burst of sand off the top of the wall, reappearing on the ground in front of their walls in a similar burst of sand, waiting for the Konoha Chunin. Looking off to the west where she sensed the warm fluffy, yet intense chakra of Naruto, followed by the burning icy feeling of what she knew to be the Uchiha. The Uchiha had a strong chakra feeling as well. She didn't need to be that advanced of a sensor to feel the strength of the raven-haired boy. But he still fell quite short of his fellow Konoha Chunin companion at the moment. Actually, now that she was focusing, the Uchiha was dangerously low on chakra despite the strength of what he did have. Even Naruto felt closer to empty than she thought possible, but unlike his teammate, she could feel his chakra rising up. With Gaara already joined by Baki, Satomari unraveled her fan and used her chakra to float down to meet the Uzumaki, Uchiha duo. Sasuke's arm was slung over Naruto's shoulders and they were clearly exhausted. Naruto's tired face twisted into a sloppy tired smile upon seeing her. Sasuke elbowing Naruto made her raise an eyebrow but she ignored it. "You guys are back," she said, "and in good shape too." Sasuke puffed up his chest. It will take more than that type of trash to take down an Uchiha elite. Naruto rolled his eyes and released Sasuke's arm, causing the Uchiha to collapse to the ground. "Oh no, the Uchiha elite has been defeated by gravity," said Naruto jokingly. "I hate you," groaned Sasuke as he struggled to pick himself up from the ground until Naruto picked him up by the back of his shirt and lifted him up with his raw physical strength, letting his friend get his legs back under him. Sasuke swayed on his feet, but did not fall down again. Glaring at his blonde teammate, Sasuke left with a HN, and slowly made his way back to Suna. "He has an attitude issue, sorry about that," said Naruto. Temari shrugged. "Don't worry about it, my teammates are S2. "Aren't they your brothers?" asked Naruto. "My teammates are S as well," confirmed Temari. Naruto just nodded in understanding. His former teammates and him had been much closer, but Sakura and Sasuke had wormed their way into his heart somehow. "I get it," said Naruto as he shuffled from foot to foot. "Gaara was mentioning you today. He, has a lot of respect for you," mumbled Temari. "I have a lot of respect for him as well. Anyone willing to invade another village for the fate of their own village and especially one that hasn't always treated him the best, clearly cares about either the village or people in it. I think that despite the way that he was treated, he wanted to do what was best for you guys," said Naruto before he shrugged, "or maybe he just really wanted to kill some people." Temari swung her fan at Naruto who caught it with a grunt. Temari frowned as usually the heavy fan was a surefire way to deal with annoying boys. "This is actually way heavier than I thought," commented Naruto as Temari stopped trying to crush him with the fan. "Are you ready for what is to come?" asked Naruto as they slowly made their way back to Suna. Sasuke was already inside of the city. Which was good, because Naruto knew that he would need a solid chakra massage to help ease him back into generating chakra. "I want to say yes, but we wouldn't really know if I am ready until it happens," replied Temari. "I don't want to say that I know that I can do it when I might not be able to. Suna is very fragile at this moment, I'm not sure how long we can last." As Naruto and Temari were basically inside the opening to Suna, Kakashi was standing there with Baki, both of them clearly having heard the reply from Temari based on the somber looks on their face. "You are quite correct, Temari," said Baki. "However, Suna is no longer your problem as of yesterday." "What?" asked Temari. "The council wanted to simply give you a scroll to explain the situation, but I have too much respect for you to simply hand you a scroll," said Baki. "In order to get Konoha's assistance for this upcoming war, we had to reinstate the alliance by any means. That meant giving them some of our jutsu, but also they wanted a person in exchange for the 20 chunin. But there was something that the council felt we had to offer to Konoha to make sure that the deal got done," said Baki as Temari hung onto his every word. "It was you, Temari," concluded Baki. "You were offered in a political marriage as a bargaining chip with Naruto Uzumaki, it was the only way to save Suna. I'm sorry, we failed you. Tamari was absolutely taken back, she was sold off to save her village. She had always known that this was a possibility, but for it to actually happen to her was something she never thought would happen. I don't know what to say, stammered Tamari. I understand this is hard to process, but I'll be with you every step of the way, said Kakashi. Tamari glanced at Naruto, his eyes looked onto Kakashi with a look that clearly said they would be having words later. But at the moment, Tamari wasn't worried about their discussion. She took in Naruto, he was 2 years younger than her at the age of 13. She had just turned 15, so the age gap wouldn't matter in 5, 10, 15 years. He wasn't unattractive, with his faded whisker marks and his goofy smile, his nice eyes. The blonde hair was a plus. He was strong, the kind of person who would protect her and any potential kid that they might have. He had been kind to her so far, and she knew that her own strength was definitely a reason they wanted to pair the two of them together. Her eyes very briefly glanced over at the sandy walls of Suna and she felt a heat balloon in her stomach. Suna was her home, she loved it with all of her heart. She remembered being little before her mom died and spending time with her, growing up with Kankuro, losing Gaara to his darkness only for Naruto to save him. It felt like she would be missing out on so much. But then again, if she refused, Suna wouldn't exist anymore and could she live with that? She could visit here if she went with Naruto, but if she said no, they die here within a couple of months. It was hard to think like this, it was hard to do anything but feel like this was massively unfair to her. However, she saw the concern on Naruto's face and she couldn't help but think that there were worse people to spend the rest of your life with. Baki opened his mouth to say something, but Tamari cut him off. I'll do it if it means saving Suna, I'll marry him. But I stay in Suna until we are certain that it's safe to leave and I get to visit as much as I want to. Kakashi frowned under his mask, but Baki nodded. Of course, I will send Lady Tsunade the hawk at once, telling that you agree to marry Naruto Uzumaki. Tamari thanked him before grabbing Naruto by the wrist and pulling him into the city, leading him. She didn't need to marry him, Baki, teased Kakashi, that was very underhanded. I know, but you have to understand, Tamari is extremely loyal to Suna. I was going to tell her that the marriage wasn't needed to make the alliance work, just her becoming a Konoha shinobi, but she had already made up her mind to do it, said Baki. She's a fiery one, noted Kakashi, does my cute little former student even stand a chance with her? Baki chuckled, she's going to bite him, chew his soul up, and spit out his lifeless husk. Kakashi laughed as he remembered Minato with Kushina, the quite meek blonde man with unparalleled strength getting rag-dolled by the angry red-haired beauty. Maybe it was something genetic for them, but Naruto needed someone strong enough to take care of themselves as well as hold him in check when he did something less than intelligent. And for all the natural strength and ability that his Mokuton using student had, he was still a little naive and innocent about the way the world worked, probably due to his heavily sheltered life. Kakashi watched Tamari continue pulling on Naruto until they disappeared around a corner and he turned to Baki. I'm going to check on one of my students at the hospital, he's experienced some pain due to overusing food pills. You make sure to send that letter, inform Tsunade that Tamari will marry Naruto and make sure to mention that Tamari chews it on her own, said Kakashi before disappearing in puff of smoke after Baki nodded. Tamari continued to pull Naruto, the various people all stopping to look and point at Tamari and Naruto. Naruto was used to this in Konoha, so he wasn't all that bothered by it. Finally they stopped at a small cafe and Tamari blushed as she realized that she had just manhandled Naruto for close to 4 minutes. She released his wrist and said, I'm sorry that Konoha and Suna basically sold us off to each other, I'm sure that you had other hopes for your future wife. She was fishing for information, like was the cute blonde in front of her involved with anyone else? Was she stealing him from someone else? Naruto blinked as he was taken back by the statement, no, not really. Ever since I unlocked the Mokuton ability, people just want to kiss my. I refuse to get involved with anyone who is a doormat because of my ancestors. Tamari nodded. She could understand that mindset because it was part of why it had been hard for her to date in the past. Being the daughter of the Cage had as many downsides as it had perks. Oh, and Gara was a murderous, unstable, moody person who had to be in her life, that really limited the dating options in life. Tamari was very pleased when Naruto lifted the flap to the cafe and gestured to her to walk through first. It was nice to be treated like girl, even if it was with someone who had been arranged to marry her. She took a seat at a small table in the corner and Naruto joined her shortly after as she looked over the menu as if she didn't know exactly what she was going to get. But this would give Naruto a chance to go over the menu as well, while giving her time to study him as well. I think I want the ginger tea, said Naruto after a moment. Why that one? Asked Tamari. I like and ginger is really good for your stomach, answered Naruto. I always get the orange zest tea, said Tamari. Naruto made a humming sound before he nodded at something. Okay, I'll get it as well then. Why? Because we're in this together and if that means having to fake like some potentially nasty tea, I should start practicing now, said Naruto. And Tamari just smiled. Naruto's forest green eyes looked out at the new forest that he had created along the edge of Suna's border, the greenery filled to the brim with the dead body of Iwa Genin and Chunin that attempted to ambush him during his border duty with Tamari and some other Suna shinobi, but they were not as well off as he was in the moment. Thus, he ended the fight with a massive burst of chakra, an impressive display of power, and the creation of a new forest. The idea was to allow the Suna shinobi to retain whatever chakra they had left as they had been traveling for 3 weeks non-stop now. You didn't have to do that, commented Tamari as her teal eyes remained looked on the destruction that Naruto had unleashed. Maybe, admitted Naruto as he scratched his cheek with his right hand, that was once again wrapped tightly in bandages for some reason that escaped Tamari. His eyes slowly morphed back to their blue color as he looked at her. She had not been up his during this border patrol mission, but she had remained close to him for the most part. She had even planted her sleeping roll next to his every night when they had taken the time to sleep. You didn't do it to show off for little old me, did you? Asked Tamari as she bat her eyelashes at him, her hands gripping her fan in the case that he provided the wrong answer. No, I did not believe that you should waste your time, energy, or chakra on such fodder, answered Naruto honestly, his face taking on an innocent look as smile at her. He's cute. Tamari smiled back at him. The 13-year-old male was hers, due to the treaty that was being offered between Suna and Konoha. It helped that she kind of liked the Mokuton user beforehand, his bright blue eyes that looked at her with carefree calmness. The fluffy feeling that his chakra gave as it washed over the surrounding area when he was relaxed. The way his eyes glowed with power as they morphed into the dark forest green as he unleashed the legendary power of the first Hokage. Naruto was a nice enough guy as well, which made it not that big of a deal to give up her romantic freedom to save her village. He was strong, sweet, and not ugly. Was probably going to be better than whoever she would have ended up with. And if the amount of chakra he had along with the amount of energy he possessed, she would be well taken care of when things became more adult at some point down the line. We should be heading back sometime soon, called out one of the Suna Jonin assigned to this border patrol mission. That raised the spirits of the entire group of 17, 16 coming from Suna and Naruto who had decided to tag along. Nobody had built up to nerve to tell him that he probably shouldn't have come as his presence and power would have been better suited protecting Suna as Gaara started to establish the sand-based barriers needed to protect the village. Again, Naruto had defeated Gaara in battle, so when he showed up to go with them, nobody said anything. Tamari glanced back at the forest. The tall trees would provide a bunch of shade in the future for Suna. Maybe she could get Naruto to create some parks in Suna for the children that live there. A break from the harsh desert sun would be nice and enjoyed by everyone, including herself. But she would bring it up when they were closer to home. Home. That word felt so weird to say or think, as with every passing day, it was more likely that she was getting closer to her last day of Suna being her home. There was also the chance that it could be destroyed, but she preferred not to think of that. With Sasuke and Sakura, both of them felt a nervous energy as they walked through the gates of Konoha, their assignment with Suna over with for the moment. But with the war on the horizon, they both knew that sooner than later, things would be ramping up. They had already dealt with a sizable amount of Iwa Genin and Chunin so far. They had also started to see more and more Oto shinobi mixed into their forces, which made Sasuke feel the sealed mark on his neck pulsing with each new Oto shinobi that they encountered. Not bothering to do anything but make their way straight to the office of the Hokage, they were greeted by a chaotic building full of people running around, nobody paying attention to them. They made their way up to the door of the Hokage's office and Sasuke took the lead and knocked for them. Enter. They did so and saw a rather relaxed-looking Tsunade sitting at her desk. The paperwork there, unlike the rest of the building, was picture-perfect. The room smelled of vanilla and Sasuke's sharp eyes noted that everything was as clean as humanly possible. Chunin Uchiha and Genin Haruno, back from Suna already, noted Tsunade, without my brat of a cousin. Sakura held back a giggle at the causal manner at which Tsunade referred to Naruto, but she had also seen Tsunade slap their teammate for being naive and dumb before. Sasuke stepped forward, taking charge as his higher rank would demand in this type of situation. Yes, Lady Tsunade. It seems that Kakashi and Naruto stayed back to continue with the arrangement of a deal of some sorts and sent us back to Konoha. Tsunade shook her head as she released a scoff in disbelief. The brat gets engaged to the princess of another village and he refers to it as a deal of some sorts to his teammates. I will have to smack some manners into him the next time I see him. Naruto's engaged, gasped Sakura. Yes, to Temari of the Hidden Sand Village, confirmed Tsunade. Sasuke felt a lurch of jealousy bubble up inside of his stomach at the thought of Naruto being given such a strong shinobi partner. Why is it always him? When are things going to shake my way for once? Tsunade continued on to say, I offered my cousin as a sign of good faith that we will aid Suna in their time of need. But also to make sure the alliance is airtight this time, Suna will have lineage on this side and Konoha will have lineage on that side. It made sense to Sasuke and Sakura, but that didn't mean that either of them had to like it. Sasuke wanted someone who could clearly take care of themselves like Temari, and Sakura was hurt that Naruto didn't tell either of them about this new development. Neither of you were on Naruto's original team, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't going to tell you. I believe he is more interested in making sure that Temari is okay with the idea of being with him, added Tsunade as she read their faces. That made things okay with Sakura, but Sasuke still carried a bad taste in his mouth from the concept of an arranged marriage. He barely heard them get dismissed and Sakura said she would see him later as she wanted to check in with her parents. That left him alone, walking through the busy streets, the people waving at him politely but nobody called out to him by name. It had been that way since the massacre. Everyone was polite to him, sometimes giving him 3 to 5% off items and goods, but nobody treated him like he was special, nobody seemed to actually care about him. He arrived at the edge of his clan's former compound. The large arc that once proudly said Uchiha was faded, the paint chipped and the words sanded down by time. Was that what was happening with me? Am I lessening the Uchiha name by not being more? By not being better? Sasuke felt anger and disappointment well up inside of his chest as he looked at the old busted-down sign, the former gateway to his clan. The vast quietness and emptiness of the compound was haunted by the ghost of those that he had lost. He could still see it as he walked through the once-filled streets, see his cousins waving at each other as they walked through the streets. Mai would offer small samples of her baked goods to all the children who would come visit her at her bakery. Yuki would be in the back, working hard under her mother. ONM would be leaping from rooftop to rooftop, the young man late as always, like a distant cousin was always said to be. Children screeching as they ran through the streets, weave in and out of the crowd, playing ninja. Sasuke walked through the ghost memories of his family, feeling an ocean of nothingness rise up inside of his body. He had been robbed of the loving family that he had, by the person he had been closest to when he still had a family. Arriving at his house, he walked around back and into the training ground, before punching the wooden dummy with enough force to crack the wood. His fist throbbed with pain, but he had managed to avoid breaking his hand like he had upon returning from the mission to the Land of Waves. Sasuke was so absorbed in pounding the training post that he almost missed it, their chakra suppressed but not completely. His mouth shot out flames as he whirled around at the same time that they dropped down behind him. His Sharingan spun to life, the world growing brighter and everything slowing down for him as he watched chakra build up, earth chakra, inside of one of their hands before it was used to push aside the flames that he had unleashed on them. The explosion as the blast of flames hit the ground, created a dust cloud, but they didn't press any advantage against him. No, they waited for the cloud to clear, remaining where they were as they continued to look at Sasuke, all of them wearing a confident smirk. How strong are these guys that they aren't even trying to press an advantage against me? I was blind with the dust cloud, yet they weren't worried about me at all. It was concerning to Sasuke as he took in the 4 people in front of him, although his Sharingan was picking up a total of 5 different chakra systems. 2 of them were deeply intertwined, but still separate. The one with the twin chakra system had fair skin and straight, dark blue hair with long bangs that covered an eye. He wore a green shade of lipstick and had dark markings around his eye. He also appeared to have a second head wood protruding from the back his upper back and hanged limply. His attire was a black shirt under brown tunics with long sleeves and bore the symbol of the Sound 4 on the hem, and black skin-tight shorts. They wore black arm warmers, traditional black shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages, and a purple, rope-like belt tied in an inverted bow around his waist that everyone before him wore. Nice to meet you, but you're a long way from Oto, noted Sasuke. Indeed we are, greeted the twin chakra system person. My name is Sakin, leader of the Sound 4. And I care why? Questioned Sasuke as he realized this person was in fact a boy. Because we were sent by Lord Orochimaru to come and extend an offer to you, said the lone female, a fair-skinned girl with a slender build and is the shortest member of the Sound 4. She had brown eyes that were accentuated by her eyelashes extending into the corners of her eyes. She looked fine enough to Sasuke, but the unladylike snarl on her face was a little off-putting. She also wore a black shirt under a tan tunic with elbow-length sleeves and bore the symbol of the Sound 4 on the hem, and black skin-tight shorts. She wore black arm warmers, traditional black shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages. Enough to you, hissed Sakin, you will give away too much information. I think I've heard enough, stated Sasuke, leave now before I force you to. Yuya laughed and the freak with 6 arms threw his head back as he let out a hissing crackle, the fat one bending over as he wheezed. These were not taking him seriously. Did they not know who he was? He was Sasuke Uchiha of the Hidden Leaf Village, Chunin and heir to the founding clan. Lightning crackled from his hands as it shot out like a sword instantly, slicing into Sakin's stomach as it closed the distance from Sasuke to Sakin in less than the time it took to blink. That stopped the laughter as they realized Sasuke had effortlessly taken out their leader. But there was no gasps of shock or horror, they just stopped laughing at him and his declaration. What was going on? Sasuke's eyes picked up the second chakra system in Sakin start to move and shift, the wound healing around his blade of lightning before a burst of chakra cancelled it and the lump on Sakin's back moved and revealed a second head that glared at Sasuke, saying dryly, ouch, that hurt. Be nice to the young boy Ukin, said Sakin in a mocking tone, his eyes locked onto Sasuke's form, we don't want to hurt his feelings. What the hell do you people want from me? Hissed Sasuke. We want for you to take your rightful place beside Lord Orochimaru, answered Sakin as if it was obvious, we know that he gave you a curse mark already. I can feel the suppressed power form here. Sasuke scoffed. The power of the mark is nothing special, it's not worth the chakra it burns through. The fat one looked at Sasuke with a sneer, that's because you only have level 1. That caught Sasuke's interest as the curse mark still made him more powerful, but if this was just the first step, then clearly it meant that there was more power to be squeezed out of it. What's the catch? Asked Sasuke. Sakin smirked. There is no catch. Lord Orochimaru wants to restore the Uchiha clan to its former glory, but under the banner of the Hidden Sound Village. That wasn't the dumbest thing Sasuke had ever heard, but it also felt like an incomplete answer. He was not a Chunin for Konoha because was pretty face, there had to be more to the story. Why does Orochimaru want to rebuild the Uchiha clan in his new village? Questioned Sasuke. Because he hates Itachi and he knows that training you to beat him will drive Itachi crazy in the long run, said Sakin. Sasuke felt his heart skip a beat as he heard his brother's name. Orochimaru was not someone to take lightly, he was a Sannin and someone who in theory would be on equal footing with Itachi. And he wanted to train him personally. Orochimaru has an issue with my brother? Asked Sasuke. Lord Orochimaru has more than an issue with your brother, Sasuke, said a new voice from behind Sasuke. Sasuke whirled around to see Kabuto standing there, a confident smirk on his face as he looked at Sasuke. What do you mean? Asked Sasuke. What I mean is that Lord Orochimaru and Itachi crossed paths and they fought, answered Kabuto, his smirk growing into an ear-to-ear grin before he told a lie he thought would seal the deal. It ended with both of them fleeing for their lives. Sasuke felt a tightness grow in his chest. Orochimaru had managed to tie Itachi in battle. That was something nobody here in the Leaf could do as far as he was concerned. Kakashi was probably the best bet with Tsunade being less combat inclined. Maybe Jiraiya could if given the chance to fight his brother in a one-on-one. But Orochimaru did it, he had seen the man since after the fight. Take a week to decide, Sasuke, said Kabuto as he motioned for the Sound 4 to disappear, leaving just Sasuke and him in the training ground. Lord Orochimaru knows what your goal in life is, Sasuke. He knows that you want to defeat Itachi by any means necessary. He is willing to train you, build you up, give you the tools to make that dream a reality, continued Kabuto. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and destroy a certain somebody. Sasuke felt the shards of icy rage build in his stomach as he remembered how he had introduced himself to Team 7 when they had been assigned to Kakashi. A lot had happened since then. Kizo had died on the Land of Waves mission. He had met Naruto who had helped him, pushed him to train better and harder. Nobody here in this village is going to try to help you accomplish your mission, Sasuke, you know that. You have to understand that it goes against their will of fire beliefs. They do not believe in revenge, they do not believe in getting equal. Look at the Senju clan. It is down to an old lady and her lone cousin. This village allowed for not just the Senju clan to die for them, but they did the same thing for the Uchiha clan. You guys built this entire village for them, yet when you guys needed some help, any help, they ignored you, they washed their hands of you as if you weren't the founding members of the village. Sasuke took in Kabuto's words and barely noticed as the glass-wearing man melted away, leaving the young Uchiha alone in his thoughts. Is there anyone in this village who actually cares about what happened to us? Where is the revenge for what happened to us? Where is Itachi's head on a spike for what was done to us? They don't care, do they? With Naruto, they made it back to the Hidden Sand Village in a little over 2 days, but Naruto was not overly tired yet. Temari was sleeping soundly inside of her shared house with her brothers, but Naruto sat on the top of the wall by himself. The patrolling Suna shinobi barely gave him more than a short glance as they passed him on their stroll around the top of their wall. Naruto felt his chakra pop up a second before he appeared in a small burst of smoke. Hey! Is that how you grade your sensei? Asked Kakashi. said Naruto as he smiled brightly up at the silver-haired Jonin. How are you feeling? Asked Kakashi. Like things are moving much too fast for me to understand what is going on, admitted Naruto. The war are being engaged? Asked Kakashi. Both. Kakashi reached down and put his right hand on top of Naruto's head. It's okay to not know what's going on. Really? Yes. I was only 13 years old when I was made a Jonin in the middle of the last war. Minato-sensei wasn't sure that I was ready. But when shit hits the fan, you have to grow up fast in the middle of war, confirmed Kakashi. How did you handle it? Kakashi shrugged. We all cope with the job in different ways, Naruto. You have a lot to look forward to. Naruto nodded as he felt a massive surge in chakra in the distance and leapt to his feet. What is that? I dunno, admitted Kakashi before they both jumped down as a massive wave of water appeared out of nowhere and threatened to overtake the entire hidden sand village. At the same time, Naruto and Kakashi slammed their hands down to create a massive mud wall that barely managed to absorb the tsunami that had just appeared and threatened the village. Look at that, Itachi, that looks like the brat we're looking for, said a confident voice from the top of the wall of mud. Naruto looked up and saw a pair of people wearing black robes with red clouds. One was blue-skinned, with blue spiky hair and a heavily bandaged bundle that had a handle on his back. The other looked really familiar, the long silky black hair, the pale skin, the red and black eyes. Another glance over both of them showed him that both of these people had slashed through headbands, the sign of rogue shinobi. Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki, the tailless beast and one of the former 7 swordsmen of the mist, said Kakashi, his voice devoid of emotion, but the respect in these two was still there. Kakashi Hatake, the copycat shinobi, noted Kisame, you're well known throughout the world too. What are you doing here? Asked Kakashi as Naruto felt chakra bubble up ever so slightly inside of Itachi's eyes. It is none of your concern, Kakashi, stated Itachi coldly, leave now and you shall be spared. Naruto Uzumaki is the one that we have come for. Naruto felt his body stiffen at that, but Kakashi never hesitated to say, over my dead body. Kisame smirked with delight, that's what I was hoping you would say. Kisame launched himself down towards Kakashi and Naruto but was blasted back by the shockwave let out by Naruto, releasing his control over his chakra. Naruto's blue eyes morphed into the deep forest green and he glared up at Itachi. Kisame was grinning more than before, his eyes gleaming with delight as he showed off his rows of spiky teeth. Which one do you want, Itachi? Give me my old Anbu partner, you take the brat. Kisame crackled with excitement as he rushed at Naruto, swinging his bandaged sword off his back. Naruto put his hand up and Kisame's smiling stopped when the blade halted upon meeting Naruto's hand. My sword absorbs chakra, hissed Kisame as he strained to apply more pressure to Naruto. How are you amplifying your strength like this? Amplifying. This is natural, replied Naruto before he tapped his foot and chakra leaked out of his foot and a tree popped out of the ground beneath Kisame, forcing him to leap away to prevent being captured. Kisame used his scaled sword to block the follow-up punch from the rushing Naruto that was pressing him, but that Naruto exploded into a snare of wooden binds upon making contact with the sword. This kid ain't half bad, noted Kisame as he broke through the binds with some effort, starting to weave through hand signs before he shot water bullets at Naruto, who weaved in and out of the attack, stalking ever closer to Kisame. There was a screeching sound and Kisame hissed as he was grazed by a lightning-covered hand, the world around him fading as he was brought out of the genjutsu by the pain. Itachi was holding his bleeding right eye as he had burned away the wooden binds that had allowed for Kisame to be captured. I fell for such a basic combo, snarled Kisame as he leapt back to stand beside Itachi, his left side spasming from the lightning-induced gash that Kakashi weaved through hand signs and flames shot at them, forcing them to split up. Kisame whirled as Naruto's hand, which had turned into a giant wooden mallet, slammed into his sword. He tripped Naruto and batted him away, only for him to melt into wood as he had substituted with a clone in time. Sand rose from the ground and threatened to swallow both of Kisame and Itachi as they saw Gaara standing over the top of the wall that surrounded Suna. The sand pushed them both back out, hundreds of yards from the village, and Itachi and Kisame looked at the trio of shinobi before them. Naruto is much more formidable than we were led to believe, and the power of the Mokuton is not to be underestimated, admitted Itachi, nor do we want to deal with Gaara of the Sand on his home turf without a more appropriate plan. What do we do now? Asked Kisame. We retreat for now, use the information from our brief scuffle here and report back to Leader Sama, said Itachi. Kisame growled at the thought of retreating, but nodded as they both slowly caught fire and melted away, leading behind the pair of rain shinobi that they had been using as puppets in this fight. Naruto frowned and Kakashi lowered his headband to cover his Sharingan. They had come sooner than Jiraiya had believed that they would. That meant that they would have to up Naruto's training sooner than later. A group of 10s ranked shinobi was something that Naruto could not beat in his current state, but perhaps with some personal training from himself and Jiraiya, they could mold Naruto into someone who would maybe have a chance. Gaara appeared in a burst of sand, standing beside the two of them. His soft green eyes glaring out into the vastness of the desert, his arms crossed in front of his chest like usual. He seemed to be moodier than normal, but that was not saying much. Why did they come here to my village? Asked Gaara, his words spoken so fly and quietly, yet there was a rage behind the words that made Naruto's hair stand on end. They're members of the Akatsuki, a group of 10 rogue shinobi who seek to capture the 9 Jinchuriki or the tailed beast for some reason or another, said Kakashi, but they are years ahead of schedule according to what Jiraiya has told me. Gaara's face didn't change, but he looked troubled. Tell me everything that you can about them. Kakashi nodded and the two of them walked off together, with Naruto not listening but trailing behind. Konoha. News had come overnight that Itachi Uchiha and another S-ranked rogue ninja had attacked Suna the previous evening. News of them being driven off by Naruto, Kakashi, and Gaara had also spread throughout the village. Sasuke couldn't even hit the training dummy, his hands balled up in anger so great that it activated his Sharingan. How could this be? How could Naruto be so far ahead of me? How could Kakashi and Gaara be of any use against someone like him? This village really is holding out on me. The strongest in the village are people who they choose to help. Where is my help? Where is my clan's justice? Where is the need to help me get my revenge? If Naruto is strong enough to actually be of use in a fight against Itachi and another shinobi on his level, then he's been holding back on me. How long has Naruto been laughing at me? How long has he been laughing at my efforts? Watching my training with that stupid smirk on his face, knowing that I'm so far behind that it doesn't even matter what I do. This village is pathetic. This village is full of weak-minded cowards who allowed my clan to be slaughtered like animals. The Uchiha clan deserves more than this. It deserves to be great again. It deserves to be full once more and not here in this pathetic village. Sasuke. Curse mark broke through the seal that Kakashi had placed on it as he gave into his anger, and by the time he packed a backpack to leave, the Sound 4 had already arrived, ready to escort him to his new home and